Good morning. So I have to tell you that my sermon title, Whirlwinds and Wonders Watching Elijah in 2013, feels particularly apt today. I have snuck into this congregation many times when I find myself in New York. I live in Washington, D.C., but I'm here often. I don't make an announcement about it, but the Spirit is strong in this place, and I know when I'm here, when I'm lucky enough to be here on a Sunday, this is where I want to be. So has never been in my wildest dreams that I expected to be able to stand in front of you on a day like today and preach on this Pride Sunday after one of the most historic events in the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender movement. God does indeed work in mysterious ways, and I'm so grateful and thankful to be here with you today. Thank you. So, what I want to talk about is the power of faith to bring justice into the world. Dr. Cornel West said that justice is simply love lived in public. But to live love publicly, what Paul calls us to do when he tells us in his letter to the Galatians to love our neighbors as ourselves, requires faith in a power of love to utterly transform our world. In this particular case, I'm not referring to faith as that still quiet voice or the tiny mustard seed. That's for another sermon. I'm referring to the big, bold, embarrassing, science fiction, Jesus in velvet kind of manifestation of faith that we see in 2 Kings when Elijah watches Elijah's disappearance before his eyes. As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them, and Elijah ascended in a whirlwind into heaven. Today, as we celebrate New York Pride, the mother of all prides, I want to linger over this particular text. What might it mean for us today? So imagine, if you will, with me for a moment, a present-day Elijah story. You're walking in Central Park with your mentor, the person that you admire the most in the world. More than anything, you want to be like that person, and you want that person's power. Maybe she's the kind of person who listens so intently, people feel healed just being in her presence. Maybe she has such a love for the good in people that she can cast out evil. More than anything, you want these qualities yourself, and you can have them. She tells you you can, but there is a catch. You have to watch her. You have to watch without skirting, without turning away as she departs this world. Then, suddenly out of nowhere, a huge tornado descends and an amazing light show, the biggest you've ever seen, comes in and scoops her up into the sky. And your task is simply to watch, as if you could do anything else. But you're told you have to watch, which you do. Then comes the hard part. How do you process what you see? How do you act in a world after witnessing this spectacle? Miraculous spectacles defy credibility, even for biblical scholars who ponder, where did Elijah go? Was this heaven or some other outer atmosphere? Did he actually die? Did his disappearance need to be so dramatic? Many pastors simply skip over this passage because it feels too incredulous. Yet I really believe that the power is precisely in its incredulity. Because it is so over the top, it is the perfect text for this Pride Sunday as it jolts us out of our seats, out of our usual way of business, even pride business, which by definition is over the top, and turns our assumptions about the capacity for change on their head. Let's consider a 2013 crazy, wondrous miracle. Just 5 days ago, we celebrated a landmark in the history of LGBT equality as we witnessed the Supreme Court strike down the Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA, so that, to paraphrase Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we can finally do away with skim milk marriages. at least in the marriage equality states. We also saw the court rule to return marriage equality to California. With this decision, now over 30% of LGBT people can be legally married. So just take a moment to let that sink in. With this decision, over 30% of LGBT people can be married. Some of you may remember the early days of Pride celebrations when the idea of queer people getting married legally and of straight people actually getting mad because they weren't invited to the wedding. This would seem incredulous, inconceivable. We are clearly at a beginning, and only a beginning. There are 37 states that don't have marriage equality, and many of these don't even have the basic civil rights protections. As was pointed out by Adrienne, the rate of homelessness is enormous. LGBT youth are often over 40% of the homeless in this country. And preachers and public officials alike still routinely make the case, as they did after the decision, and they did in Pennsylvania right after that marriage equality goes against God's law. Still, it is safe to say that we are standing at the threshold of a new consciousness, a consciousness a Supreme Court decision puts into sharp relief, but one that has been bubbling up and bubbling over in the changing hearts and minds of people across the country. If you are over 10 years old, you have lived long enough to see this change of consciousness become dominant. If you are over 40 like me, you have witnessed the unimaginable become a reality. The task for us today, I want to suggest, is to pay attention to this transformation. Not just to understand the legalese of the whole thing, the who gets what and where do you have to live to get it, discussions that are now everywhere, but to the wonder of it all. If, like Elijah, we wish to claim the power of this moment, if we wish to pick up the mantle, we have to be willing to watch, without filters, without shades, at the miracle that is this day. Then, from a space of awe, we can ask, as I imagine Elijah asking, how are we supposed to process what we see? And how do we act in the world after witnessing this miracle? Let's consider a 2013 travesty. Just 6 days ago, this same Supreme Court voted to dismantle the 1965 Voting Rights Act, a core, I would say, sacred piece of civil rights legislation that provided safeguards against rampant discrimination at the ballot box at a time when African Americans and Latinos have to wait nearly twice as long as white people to vote. And we see increasingly more strident and more discriminatory actions at the voting booths against poor people, young people, and poor people, and people of color. It seems incomprehensible that discrimination at the ballot box could be conceived of as an antiquated problem. In this case, the court turned away from a past monumental achievement, a wonder of an earlier era, to declare that we have enough justice, as if justice was a piecemeal thing to be measured out sparingly in breadcrumbs. In a recent Times editorial that looks at these two decisions together, Charles Blow warned LGBT advocates, it's in the decades that follow that personal discrimination fades into the fog of a more ominous and amorphous structural discrimination. This is what legacy injustice looks like. This is what legacy injustice, which can reverberate for generations through a population, is assigned term limits. Fatigue grows in the wake of fairness. Fatigue grows in the wake of fairness. We have seen this fatigue over and over again, and it helps perpetuate a scarcity mentality that tells us parsimony, not generosity, defines who we are. The notion that I cannot have my rights without you being denied yours. This mentality makes us tired, it creates burnout, it causes us to check out because there is nothing life-giving about it. It is this mentality we are called by today's scripture to most urgently work against. But we can't do it without faith, and a giant leap of faith at that, in a power that is bigger than our own wildest imaginings, a power that will work through us to expand and expand and expand until we all feel the blessing. In the interest of full disclosure, I should tell you that I attend a Unitarian Universalist congregation in Washington, D.C., and we UUs tend to be very rational people and are less inclined to see the miraculous in our lives. The leap of faith I am calling for does not come easy for me, not at all. For me, what is comfortable is to fit God and faith into a kind of vague chain of synonyms for a rather tepid love, summed up by that warm feeling that you have maybe today at church and with people that enjoy being with each other. Yet my comfortable God, my domesticated God, can never compel me to live in a way that is transformational. For that, I need to be open to witnessing the awesomeness of God, an awesomeness that I can't control. For when we truly witness transformation, it transforms us. Like Elijah, we come into our power the moment we observe the wonder of God at work. Stop for a moment and think about that. For Elijah to be a prophet, he can't just hear about Elijah's ascension, he has to watch it. By witness, he is changed. He cannot go back to business as usual. And this is the hardest part. Transformation means transformation. It cannot accommodate the same old ways of being. There is no room for the measuring stick way to conceive justice. A little here, a little there, some for you, but not for you so much this year, maybe next. For the nature of love is sloppy and it's infectious. It spills over into everything and everybody's business. Dividing up transformational love is like getting a gorgeous French manicure while having your foot sawed off at the same time. The two cannot be reconciled. Look, it's not surprising that we keep the power of transformational love, the power of a mighty faith, under heavy sedation. Our culture is not set up for it. We are told routinely to stay clearly in our lane, keep our joy contained to a few close friends or a single constituency. We are taught to be paranoid, to watch our backs, and become someone because somebody might come and snatch what is rightfully ours. And in the context of limited resources, it's absolutely true that a cost-benefit analysis reigns. But if we stay open to the wondrous, we can find a way out of nowhere to bring more joy into the world. The first miracle Elijah performed after he took Elijah's mantle was to clean the water at Jericho so that the people there could survive. His miracles were more on the community organizing type of miracle. Unlike Elijah's miracles, Elijah's were less against powerful figures, but more aimed toward preserving communities. His vision developed, expanded, and took on a different set of urgent needs than his predecessor. And so it will be with us if we have the courage to respond to what we witness, and if we do so immediately before it gets subsumed in our old ways and comfortable patterns for understanding change. This is why Jesus, I believe, was so insistent with the would-be disciple when he tells him, "No one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God." All this guy wanted to do was bury his dead, but Jesus said, "No, you have to go now." When we try to fit miracles into the shape and form of our established lives, we cage our faith. we harden our hearts and stave off transformation. The temptation to do this is incredibly strong, as all our cultural conditioning is built on rationalizing the wondrous and rationing justice. Resistance needs to be big, it needs to be insistent, and committed to watch what is really going on without flinching. When you go out to Pride celebration today, or even if you don't, I hope you will reflect on the miracle that such a day could exist in this city. Reflect how this city, with all its problems, and without sugarcoating those problems, those need to be watched too, could lead the world in its capacity to radically love our LGBT neighbors. Then come back here to this community with its deep commitment to justice, transformed by the love you have witnessed, and grow that love bigger, bolder, more outrageous, more expansive, and more faithful than anything anyone has seen before. Know that wherever I am, when you do this, I will be watching you, and I will not look away. Thank you.